or letter?
Now, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Nakacinda.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to second this motion. And I want to state from the very beginning that I rise to second the committee's report, ably moved by the Kantanshi lawmaker, Honorable Anton Mumba, who has acquitted himself very well in expressing the findings of your select committee on the presidential appointment of Dr. Simon Kamwendo Miti to serve as Secretary to Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, I take cognizance of the solemn nature and the importance of this decision for the due consideration for the subsequent ratification of the appointment of the named individual. Mr. Speaker, his qualifications and experience speaks for themselves as articulated by the mover of the motion. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, appointed Dr. Miti on the 27th of June, pending ratification by this House. Within moments of that announcement, Mr. Speaker, special interest groups raced to be the first to oppose him, as was seen on social media. Since that time, we have seen special interest groups whip their followers into a frenzy by spreading misrepresentations, outright falsehoods about the said appointees close to 30 years of impeccable civil service track record. Mr. Speaker, it is in the President's broad discretion to consider an appointee's ability for the job among other special considerations within his constitutional rights. My duty, Mr. Speaker, as a member of Parliament, which I believe is for all of us, is to focus on the appointee's qualifications, as long as that the nominees or appointees standing remains clean within the confines of the law. I fully expect us to be able to put aside any and all personal preferences in making our decision, but to support such a good and noble appointment. It's against this background that each one of the honorable members present here will have to debate and decide. Personally, Mr. Speaker, I've always opposed litmus tests or indeed try and error for appointment to such senior offices. But today, this appointment meets the standard of the highest requirement, owing to many of Dr. Simon Miti's achievements as detailed in the committee's report, with respect to the fact that he possesses the requisite competence, necessary experience, and disposition for the appointment. Mr. Speaker, as your select committee, we listened carefully to the testimonies at the committee hearing from witnesses some of whom knew Dr. Miti personally. It is without doubt that Dr. Miti has over the years exhibited high level of professionalism and confidentiality during those direct interactions with sitting presidents, including at their weakest in terms of health. He has additionally demonstrably shown high level of maturity, as is desirable, especially at this level of work as Secretary to Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank your committee, chaired by Honorable Anton Mumba, for doing a thorough and diligent work, leaving no stone unturned in scrutinizing the appointees' qualifications and background, using facts to separate facts from fiction and reality from propaganda, amidst propaganda and rhetoric distortions aimed at discrediting Dr. Simon Miti's appointment. Mr. Speaker, all the witnesses, as has already been said, attested that Dr. Miti has been an exemplary public servant, an administrator, manager, director, coach, husband, and father. What was saddening is that our findings as a committee that people who had been in privileged positions of influence at the time of these stories and the occurrence at the Ministry of Health and were best placed to correct the impression being created at the time, with their full conscience, Mr. Speaker, had written in their reports to then President Rupia Banda and President late Michael Chirufya Sata, may so rest in peace, concerning the said falsehoods. They said, though innocent, that if he was cleared publicly, there would be a public uproar. Mr. Speaker, they were willing to sacrifice an innocent man's hard-earned reputation to satisfy the moment. This was not only an act of cowardice, but serious affront to deliberately perpetuate an injustice against a person. Thank God that President Sata saw through that malice, and appointed him as permanent secretary, parliamentary business, under the office of the Vice President. And later on, President Lungu appointed him in the subsequent positions he has held. Despite, Mr. Speaker, the unfounded turbulent stories, my fervent hope is that he will work to prove all of those who hold some negative feeling wrong to the best of his ability in the interests of our great nation. Had it not been for the bravery of the appointing authority today to do the right thing against the tide of public opinion, as a result of falsehood the public was fed with, Dr. Miti would have continued to suffer this injustice. It is therefore commendable on the part of the Republican President to demonstrate such fearless courage to undo the injustice done to a loyal servant of the Republic. An individual with this kind of wealth of experience, Mr. Speaker, and professional qualification with enormous institutional memory in other jurisdictions, Mr. Speaker, would be called a national asset, and indeed is a national asset even here. By this appointment, Mr. Speaker, we can only implore the said appointee, taking a leaf from his ordeal, to weed out the perceived corruption and the laissez-faire attitude within the civil service. He should take advantage of his experience to honor by clearing the names of fellow civil servants who, in the course of their duties, or indeed in his tour of duty, who may be unjustly persecuted in the court of public opinion by publicly declaring their innocence without fear or favor. Some argue that because this is a lifetime appointment to our highest office in the civil service, the public interest requires that doubt be resolved against the nominee. Mr. Speaker, others see the public interest as embodied in our long-established principle of, according to those accused of misconduct, a presumption of innocence. And, Mr. Speaker, the presumption of innocence is one of the fundamental principles of human rights until proven otherwise. And as is the case for Dr. Miti, in evaluating any given claim of misconduct, we will be ill-served in the long run if we abandon the presumption of innocence and fairness. Mr. Speaker, tempting though it may be, we must always remember that it is when passions are most afflamed that fairness is most in jeopardy. Mr. Speaker, hearing through the committee's report as ably submitted by the mover of the motion, I find that Dr. Miti is a survivor of a malicious attempt to discredit his good service over the years. A painful and compelling experience. With this experience, we hope he can fit into that office as he will fulfill a critical role of supporting the presidency to fulfill his responsibility in line with the rules of the Constitution of the Republic, to interface between the politician occupying that office of president with our professional civil service in delivering service to our people in a free, fair, transparent, and non-partisan manner, an expectation he has demonstrated over the years to serve well. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I urge all honorable members to rise above falsehoods and distortions, but be driven by truth and justice, as this is essential for our institution, Parliament, whose effective performance is a cornerstone to our democracy. Your committee, Mr. Speaker, having done its due diligence through written and oral submissions from witnesses and thoroughly scrutinizing the appointment, it only remains for me, Mr. Speaker, to take this humble honor to second the motion in the affirmative that this Parliament ratifies this appointment without any further ado. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I beg to second.